Okay. Good morning. It's good to see you on the last day of our conference. Yeah, it was an intense night, so I'm even more glad that you join us today. As our today's presenter, I would like to welcome our great colleague from the Netherlands, who has been working with organizations in the Gestalt approach for 20 years. For the past 10 years, we have focused on the healthcare sector, emphasizing the concept of self-managing or self-organizing teams. The topic of her presentation today is a Gestalt approach to self-management in nursing homes. I'm very curious about her insights and how we can use them in the organizations we co-create. So let's welcome Georgette Kempink.
Thank you, Michał. Yes, welcome, dear audience, dear colleagues, dear friends, some old and new. And I'm glad that some of you came here because I noticed there was a big party last night. So, and probably a lot of you also are already back to their countries. And let me welcome also people online if they are looking at this right now. My name is Georgette, as you mentioned, from the Netherlands, living and working in the Netherlands. I was invited to talk about self-organization, especially in the healthcare sector. Although I was trained as a Gestalt therapist once. 23 years ago, I started my training program in Amsterdam at the Institute. But after I graduated, I started as a consultant. So that is my work nowadays. I hope you can understand me well. Yes? Great. I'm sorry I can't speak Spanish and or understand it, so I'm sorry for that. 20 years ago, I started with my company, Broos. I started it with my husband, actually just to support organizations in their development. I always made the joke, oh, whenever there's a problem, I can help. But working in different sectors, even in the financial industry and big businesses, it did not feel right. It was not aligned somehow with my Gestalt values. So after a while, I ended up in the healthcare sectors. In a few minutes, I will say something about the steps I want to make. But first, before we go to the content, let's say, of this presentation, of my presentation, I want to say something personal, because a lot of people sometimes ask me, okay, how did you end up working as a coach, consultant in nursing homes or the elderly care? How did you end up there, or how did you get involved? And I think there's a personal story to it, and I will want to start with that. Mi madre, sí, mi madre, and my daughter in the middle. I took this selfie 8 years ago, in 2015. So, my daughter is now 20 years old. And it's the last picture I made for me and my mother. A year after that, she died. I took this selfie on her birthday. She turned 81 that day. My mother suffered from multiple sclerosis. which is a disabling disease of the nervous system. And she came to live in a nursing home when she was 66 years old. So not really talking about elderly care, right? It's about long-term care. My father could not take care of her anymore because she needed very special care. Though he visited her twice a day when she was living in a nursing home. After he died, 8 years after she came to live in a nursing home, it was up to us, the three children, I'm the youngest at home, and of course also friends supporting. But most important was, of course, the team of nurses around her. She needed 24/7 help. Getting up, getting dressed, eating, drinking, going to the bathroom, you know, very basic needs. It was very important for her to keep her dignity and to keep her autonomy, you know, controlling her own life, even if she was dependent on others completely. But that was the most important for her. She did not have big wishes, you know, the little things matter for her. Like she was used to stay up late, you know, go to bed at 12 o'clock, to watch the latest news and then go to bed. But in the nursing home, everyone is going to bed, put to bed, let's say, at 8 o'clock or so. So she really had to fight for that, to be put in bed at 12 o'clock at night by the night nurse. And you must think of, you know, living in a location with 300 other people. She was the only one, because she raised her voice, she was put to bed at 8 o'clock. She loved food, like in Spain, you like food, huh? She loved food. And she liked to have a hot meal in the evening. But that was not possible. Okay. And she said, but I would like to have a hot meal in the evening. Okay. Then she succeeded in that, and she got a hot meal. Heated in the microwave, though, but okay. And she was, again, the only one in the whole location of 300 people that ate a hot meal in the evening. Just little things, basic things. And I know when I'm talking about our healthcare system, I'm becoming very much aware that we have one of the best healthcare systems, you know, in the world. So I'm aware of that when I'm speaking about these things. But even then, the smaller things matter. But after a while, she was living there for 16 years. You know, she came in when she was 66, and she died at 82. 16 years living in a nursing home. So while this period, you know, went, we saw the healthcare system collapsing. And there was less attention for inhabitants. Budget costs, you know, changing managers all the time, all things, shortage of nurses, of course. So there were lots of things going on, and the care got worse. My mother was mentally sharp until the end, but her body got weaker and weaker due to the MS, so she needed more and more care. At some point, my mother couldn't feed herself anymore and had trouble swallowing due to the MS. And there was not enough time to feed her slowly. Not enough time to feed her slowly. So they asked, of course, the family to take care of her as well. And of course, we did that. So every time I visit her, I fed her. And those were very beautiful moments, I could say. But at the same time, I wasn't living very nearby. I had my own family, 2 children, own family to take care of, and of course, working. But I got to know all the ins and outs of a nursing home, as you can imagine. Meanwhile, I was working in organizations on self-organization. And I think 8 years ago, I got the opportunity, they asked me to support nursing teams in an elderly care home. So that was my first, I got to know the nursing home from another perspective, not from the daughter perspective, but from a perspective of a coach and consultant. And I don't know, what struck me, I think, was that I saw, nurses are very passionate about what they do. That's why they work in healthcare, I think. But what struck me was that there was also a lot of insecurity. People working very hard in very rigid structures. And that struck me. And I think that's the moment, I think, that I thought, okay, this is my call to action. This is my call to action. Raise awareness about alternative ways of organizing that foster the well-being of human dignity of clients, both clients and professionals, because I saw both of them were struggling in that system. Because there was little room for spontaneity or improvisation. Coming to Madrid, I was thinking, okay, there are all therapists in the audience, not knowing for sure if they could connect with my story working in organizations. I was not sure, but I thought this is an opportunity because there are Gestalt practitioners in the community who work with or in organizations. So it will be a chance to step up here and share my experience of working as a Gestalt professional in organizations. And I thought, okay, what's the connection with therapists? I thought, oh well, adults work many hours in organizations. And some have very many problems, work-related problems. Think about burnout, think about bore-out, think about the bullshit jobs. So I was thinking, okay, when people go to therapy or people are going to a coach, they probably also need some help to cope with the environment, their working environment. So I thought, okay, this is a connection I think we can make. So to create better organizations, healthier organizations. And I think this aspect of the work environment is very crucial in our modern society. People getting ill of working in organizations. So I think it's interesting and a must to focus on the field of organizations and the way we organize, in which many individual problems arise. I was wondering, just a little question for the audience. Who is working with organizations or some I know some combine it. Poco. Okay. Not much. Okay, interesting. I hope that in the future, this group will grow. Yes, that's my ambition. Michael? Yes. Okay. Back to the steps. These are the steps I want to take with you this morning. To understand a little bit what is going on in organizations, I want to talk about traditional management and the impact of it in the healthcare sector. And I will talk about the shortcomings, about the negative things, of course, at first. Then I will say something about the criticism from our Gestalt founding fathers in the previous century, because they already said something about organizations and the way people organize that. And then I want to share an example of hope, so to say, a spark of hope. I noticed a lot of conversations during these days about, of course, all the crises we suffer, but I think also it needs sometimes a spark of hope. So I will bring that in the model of buurtzorg. Perhaps some of you know buurtzorg already, but I will talk something about that. And after that, okay, what can I do as a Gestalt professional in this transformation? Supporting organizational transformation through Gestalt. And I have some challenges for our community, looking at Michael. I want to, I want to, work with you for an hour, but I have some questions and we have some time to chit-chat, have some interaction during this hour. Okay. Traditional management and its impact on the elderly care. I will do it first by giving you an example, again, of what I come across sometimes in organizations, and I will tell a story. Recently, I supported a nursing team that takes care of people with somatic disorders. The clients or residents, the people living there, are completely dependent on others for getting up, being washed, getting dressed, like my mother. The first time I met this team, it was during their own team meeting. Only a small group had shown up. The new manager also stopped by. She was late. When I asked the team how things were going, they first remained silent. Then one of the student nurses, a young woman, starts speaking. The workload is extremely high, she says, and she continues. It's like a car wash in the morning. Come and see for yourself. We have not enough people to do the work, and there is no support from the management to help us out. I got the picture immediately. You got the picture immediately? The car wash in the morning. So people are washed one after the other and then placed in the shared living room, sitting in their wheelchairs, just on time for the morning coffee at 10 o'clock, and where other colleagues take over. Working fast, running, flying, with not enough time and not enough people. And I have this image of a production line. Then another student nurse, an older woman, adds, while her face turns red, I'm so ashamed for my heavily pregnant colleagues in my team to do this work. That it has to be like this, I feel very much ashamed in this organization, in this country. The new manager barely responded to what is being said, and she doesn't even introduce herself properly. She only responds by indicating that she will review the hours and the planning. After the meeting was ended and upon leaving the room, the manager says to me that she thought the people who expressed their opinions were just giving a big mouth. As you can imagine, there were several things that caught my attention right away. Every morning, it was hard work to have all the residents ready on time. 10 o'clock coffee. The team members felt unsupported. Deep feelings of shame were shared. And the manager didn't make any contact, viewing people who expressed themselves as troublemakers and focusing mainly on the means. Okay. Some characteristics, I think, of the way our traditional system of management looks like. Standardization of work procedures, everyone sitting at 10 o'clock for the coffee, splitting of tasks, you know, the ones who are washing, the ones who pour the coffee, the ones who give the medicine, and separation of thinking and doing. The nurses do, and the manager is thinking. You know? And a focus on efficiency and finance. How can we solve this problem? Oh, look at the planning, look at the hours, etc., but not in other way. I made another sheet. What is the impact really on this when you look at on a deeper level? Of course, after COVID, you know, the nursing teams in the elderly care, especially, of course, had, you know, a lot of trouble to cope with that. But at this time, you see a lot of high absenteeism in healthcare because of the workload is so high, and not only physical complaints, but also, of course, mentally. The feelings of shame, like a moral injury. And it's a feeling of shame about their work, about their profession, because they are so passionate. They are so passionate about their work. They want to do good, but now they think, it's not working for me, and they feel bad about it. And the practical experience is overlooked, I think. When I think of this separation of thinking and doing, what I see is that the manager is really, and I don't want to bash managers, I don't want to bash them, but this is a system, so think about that. There are very good managers in the whole field, but it's about the system. The manager is the one who does the thinking, which is more rewarded than the ones who do the work, and the practical experience is overlooked. Sense of helplessness. You know, they tell their story and say, I don't know. You can solve it. Erosion of relationships. Picture the people washing in the morning in the production line. How can you relate to that client? How can you relate to the patient? How can you relate to the inhabitant? And also between the colleagues, of course. No room for creativity and improvisation. No room for that. Zero autonomy. And humans, the professionals, are the resources in this whole system to do the work. For the clients, of course, there are also some effects. No personalized care. After an evening, I'm looking again at you, Michael, after an evening, but some of you were there in the restaurant, you have a nice evening and you want to get up late, right? Not every morning at the same time, perhaps. So what you see is no personalized care. Everyone, 8 o'clock, out of the bed, 10 o'clock, coffee. And I think there's also a loss of dignity there, when there's no connection with the patient or client. Not being seen as a human being. And more in general, feelings of loneliness, homesickness, boredom with the clients. And also, parallel to the professionals, little control over our own life. And on top of that, because we're talking about the traditional way of management, command, control, you know, we need a lot of data and a lot of administration. I have a metaphorical story to show you something. The Doctor and the Girl, title of this drawing. This was published in an American medical Association. It's a medical journal in 2012, and a discussion arose around this drawing. The little girl in the middle draw this when she visits her doctor. And you see the doctor. Can you see it? The doctor is on the left. Her mother is on the right, and her sister and her babysitter sister are in the waiting room. She drew this after she visited her doctor. And of course, what you see is that the doctor is working probably very hard to do his administration while he is with her. And for me, this is metaphorical of where we are today. And it's, you know, the doctors in the Netherlands, they say they have spent 50% of their time with patients and 50% on administration. So that's a lot. And of course, when we see it from the perspective of the Gestalt as well, you know, the doctor don't have, you know, the contact, don't see the body language or how she tells him the story. It's completely gone there. So when it becomes excessive, this bureaucracy, this administration, quality of care does no longer matter, and a doctor or a healthcare provider, and probably some of you also are facing this, ends up operating the system instead of the patient. First question. Just have a moment with someone next to you. What do you recognize of this? Perhaps in your country, perhaps in your profession, or so what do you recognize of this? Just have a chit-chat with one of you neighbors. Do you recognize this in your professional life, in your personal life? Okay. Okay. Perhaps we can check later what the experiences are, because I can imagine it's different in different countries as well, but hierarchy, bureaucracy, perhaps in a lot of places it's the same. I'm curious about that. What is the connection with the Gestalt? I found out there is a connection. No, not in a critical way. There's the connection, yes. But I will start with what I call the bad guys. To understand a little bit of what is going on, we have sometimes look back. When we say in the Gestalt, it's here and now. I was at the here and now. But sometimes, if things from the past are still here, you have to face it or be aware of that. I think these are a little bit the bad guys, perhaps you could say. The classical management approach, which marked the beginnings of the organizational management, was in the 1930s, so 100 years ago. And it was particularly against Frederick Taylor, which was an engineer, and his ideologies. He was, you could say, the first manager. Simultaneously with Taylor, another approach to business management service led by McKinsey, which was an accountant. He was a professor in accounting, and there's still a big firm, which is the McKinsey firm, of course, with a lot of consultants who focus on efficiency. And this business model is now in the healthcare system. It's a business model. And already our Gestalt founding fathers in the previous century wanted to improve human conditions within society, institutions and organizations, I think after World War II. And Paul Goodman was one of the co-writers of the Gestalt therapy, as you know, argued that social institutions could lead individuals to become detached or even alienated from our natural selves. So the work of Goodman was deeply rooted in humanism, and he sought to promote the well-being and fulfillment of individuals within a communal context. And one of his quotes is, oh, I forgot. I don't like it, but if you see, in his book of Frederick Taylor, he said, in the past the man has been first, and in the future the system must be first. And that's where we are right now, I think. Paul Goodman. He already said, we must break away from systems that prohibit individuals from being themselves and practicing the creativity that most characterizes them. So the criticism on the system is in the roots of the Gestalt, already there. Some of you might be thinking, so what's the significance of all this? Well, for me, in those 20 years, I discovered more and more about these patterns that are so, so deep. The patterns are so deep, and I still see them in the organizations nowadays. And when we look at healthcare, there's another big challenge. I don't know exactly about Spain or other countries, but in the Netherlands right now, we face a big challenge coming at us. And that means the aging process. And when I went to describe something about my story today, I said it's about the double aging. And they could not translate it, double aging. But it's about that we are getting older, and we have, of course, more severe problems, but also the group of older people is getting better. So it's a double challenge, and there are not many people to take care of us in 20 years or so. As I said, I want to also have a hopeful story on this. As I said, looking for new ways, looking for new forms, looking for a good form, looking ways that are more suitable for us nowadays. So I brought you a little video of Buurtzorg, which is a home care organization or network organization that was founded in 2006 and succeeded in doing it very differently. And with this video, I come to the story of self-organization and self-management. Let's look at it.
In 2006, Jos de Blok, Gonnie Kronenberg and Art Leverink founded Buurtzorg, the Dutch home care nursing provider. They had become frustrated working in traditional home care settings where command and control screwed up the delivery of optimal care. The group set out to prove that an alternative management model based on freedom, trust, and autonomy would benefit everyone, including the patients. Starting out with just 4 nurses, they were determined to revolutionize their industry. And that is exactly what happened. The organization has grown exponentially and currently employs 11,000 nurses. By the way, there are no planning, HR, or marketing departments at Buurtzorg, and not a single manager to be seen. So how does all this work? Let's take a look. Buurtzorg's purpose is to help people live meaningful, autonomous lives. Everything they do is focused on that specific purpose. Their 3 guiding principles provide guidelines on how to move towards that purpose. Humanity above bureaucracy. Simplicity above complexity. And practical above hypothetical. These principles are woven into the fabric of the organization. Contrary to common practice, Buurtzorg decided not to grow a traditional hierarchy. Instead, it chose to create a network of self-managing teams. Every time a team grows to 12 nurses, they split. The 2 newly formed teams grow until they too reach that magic number and split again. This allows exponential growth without adding thick layers of bureaucracy. The nursing teams are each responsible for a specific neighborhood. They do all the necessary work, such as nursing, planning, personal development, recruitment, and the hiring and firing. Nowadays, there are around 900 self-managed teams, each enjoying a great deal of autonomy. The headquarters that supports this network of teams consists of only 50 people. This represents just 0.4% of the total workforce. Besides the support staff, there's a group of 20 coaches and a top leadership team of 2 directors. The coaches support the teams by helping with problems they cannot solve themselves. But Buurtzorg's teams are more than just a sum of their parts. A self-developed IT system, Buurtzorg Web, connects them. Their intranet allows teams to share knowledge, compare performance, and create alignment. For example, if nurses encounter unfamiliar situations, they use Buurtzorg Web to get advice from more experienced colleagues. Often, an answer arrives within hours. This also allows CEO Jos de Blok to communicate with everybody at lightning speed. He writes blog posts to instantly inform all colleagues of what's on his mind, and invites their advice too. Through this radical form of self-management, Buurtzorg outperforms the competition when judged against almost any relevant metric you can think of. Buurtzorg enjoys the highest client satisfaction rating of any home care nursing organization in the Netherlands. Staff absenteeism is 33% lower than elsewhere, while staff turnover is half that of its peers. Overhead costs are 67% lower, And, even more astonishing, Buurtzorg cures patients faster than its competitors. It's no surprise that more and more organizations are adopting the Buurtzorg principles. Buurtzorg shows the way towards more human, better motivated, and truly impactful work. Thus, providing scale without hierarchy, alignment without bureaucracy, and autonomy without anarchy. Learn more at corporate-rebels.com/academy.
I don't take the credit of the video because I didn't make it, but I thought it was, very short, telling exactly what Buurtzorg is about, and I think it needs, it serves an applause. So let's look at it from a Gestalt perspective. That's what I was thinking, because, this is not something you can implement. And that's exactly what happened in the Netherlands for the last 15 years. Some organizations just try to implement it. But it's about the principles behind it. It's about the values behind it. That's the most important one. And what they do is to put the purpose up front. The purpose of Buurtzorg is helping people to live meaningful, autonomous life. It's not about the organization. It's about supporting people. That's the core business, so to say. And that's very strong, what they do. Not building, big, important organizations with a lot of layers. So let's look at it from a Gestalt perspective, and I would like to invite you to do that as well. So we saw in the little video, these are the principles they have, the values and the guidelines. So my invitation is again to chit-chat with someone next to you or behind you to look at this example from a Gestalt perspective. So how is the Buurtzorg approach related to our Gestalt principles? And I'll give you a few minutes, and after that, two of my colleagues somewhere in the audience will ask you some of your reactions on that. So, how is the Buurtzorg approach related to our Gestalt principles, if you look at this? Please take a few minutes to think of and share it with your neighbor. Okay. Let's have some, let's hear some people in the audience. Martin? Ah, me. Okay. There are 2 mics in the audience. I'd like to hear some reflections. Yes.
Hi, my name is Arpad. I'm from Hungary and have a pleasure or struggle to work 15 years in corporate and 15 years in Gestalt therapy. I was fascinated to see your presentation and really admired this self-governing principle. However, I have a little devil in my right shoulder, which is how this system ensures that people are creating a performance which is meeting the shareholders' expectations. Why would a team work harder and faster than they naturally will? That's one. And the second, we're talking about people. And if my experience, if people are on their own, soon personal agendas start working. So how do you ensure that in the teams, every people takes an equal part of the work, and there's not going to be people who are self-governed leaders and taking over the agenda? This is it.
Okay, thank you. Some other insights. What are the related to our own Gestalt principles? Yes, Julius.
Hi, my name is Julius from Germany. I'm also working in the organizational area. And I mean, first we discussed your question. And so and the question is like, how does it relate to Gestalt principles? So I think we were kind of clear that, I mean, it emphasizes a lot the question of, we called it like self-responsibility, right? It's really the being responsible for myself, being responsible for my clients. And I am also interested when I like look at organizations, the question of ownership. So I would be interested, like, who owns actually Buurtzorg, and are people, do they participate also from an ownership perspective in that company, or are there shareholders who wants to get like money out of the system? Because that, I think, probably doesn't work.
Yeah, no, they don't. No. Okay, some other reflections? Yes. Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Katharina. I got to know nurses being much used to the hierarchy of the medical system, and they decided somehow to get into this kind of system, and to make the shift to self-organization and being responsible. I think it's also a lack of safety which comes with that, like Buurtzorg is organized, and I would like to know how what they need as a other kind of safety if they leave the hierarchy and the responsibility of the management.
Okay, I don't know exactly the question again.
How to make the shift for the employees?
Ah, okay. I will come back to that later. Yes? Last reaction, and then we go on.
Yes, hello, I'm Jill from Sweden, and I am a nurse.
Ah.
So worked 20 years in hospitals. When I see the Buurtzorg approach, I think, how much more do they want the nurse to do? Because the self-organizing will take more time. And that we live in a context that does not value care work. And so I'm not trying to be too negative, because I love small groups thinking differently, because that can spread too. But I'm quite concerned about a world context that does not value care work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This is a topic I said earlier that it's overlooked, you know, the experience from people doing work like care. And that's where the insecurity comes from, you know. And that's what you see that young people also do, you know. We all go to the university or become managers because the work as, you know, in nursing work is not valued that much anymore. Well, I was thinking from a Gestalt perspective, when I look at Buurtzorg, I see, you know, working in the small teams is something like a sense of belonging, you know. I see in the nursing homes, for instance, which is a different context than the home care, of course. But there you see that there are sometimes large teams where people don't know each other anymore. So the sense of belonging, working in small groups, is something what I think in the Gestalt, that you are able to make contact, that you can connect with others, is very important. And there's also a holistic approach. You know, the nurses do all the work, that's true, but it's also a holistic approach. It's not splitting the tasks in all small parts, and that's important. So there's something like being more fully present, because also the decision-making is easier. The team members are collectively responsible for the team result, and they are less affected by top management and planning, and concentrate on the patient care. That is what we see with those smaller teams. And the Buurtzorg model no longer relies on the manager as a leader. I think that is very important. You saw that. That's very radical, of course, when you look at the traditional way of management. And I think in Gestalt, Margarita Spagnol-Lob described it as we see the natural function of the group. The concept of leadership is in the Gestalt a natural function of the group. And that is what's happening in those small teams. But however, despite all the best intentions and efforts to shift the thinking around leadership, because this was something of the past 15 years, a big thing in the Netherlands. And when you say you have a concern, I have a concern too. Because what you see nowadays in the nursing homes, that's what I said, you just can implement it. So it's about the values behind it, the principles underneath it, or that's important to adopt, and then see what kind of forms are needed. And if you say that nurses have to do all the work, then I say, okay, but so let's scrape some rules and some protocols, because that's the other problem we saw, and that's the bureaucracy. So don't put that in the teams, of course. But it's also about acting in the here and now. And I was again coming to Paul Goodman, because I was thinking one of the guidelines is practical above hypothetical. And I like that one. And I like that one a lot when I think of Buurtzorg. It's so simple, it's so focused, that's what I like. And it's not hypothetical in a sense that, you know, writing plans and thinking about it, and, you know, and again thinking about it and not acting about it. And then I saw this Paul Goodman's line. Suppose you had the revolution you are talking and dreaming about, how would you live if you were already in the ideal society? Whatever you would do, then do it now. Start living that way now. And when I look at Buurtzorg and Jos de Blok and his colleagues, they said, okay, we are starting something different. So this is about acting and not only about making plans or whatever. So I like the phrase of Paul Goodman, dream about it. But then, how can I, as a Gestalt practitioner, coach, consultant, I don't like the word consultant, sorry, but coach is better, perhaps organizational coach, Gestalt practitioner. I like the word practitioner though, and I feel like I'm a practitioner, modeling through in all of these organizations with all of these teams in need. So I feel like I'm a practitioner for sure. But what role can I play, you know, in this big, big world with this dominance of this management thinking system? What can I contribute from a Gestalt background? And I was thinking of an example because, of course, it needs some training. Of course, it needs some teaching. Someone has the question of how can you go towards self-organization with the teams? Yes, of course, when the manager always is deciding and you say, okay, we are a self-management team, of course you have to think, how are we going to do that? We have to do another way of decision-making. So of course there's a part of training and experimenting with that, you know, other routines. But I want to illustrate my work with which I think says something of working what emerges. And I think that is the basis of our paradoxical theory of change. Allow me to illustrate this with an example. Caregivers working in nursing homes often find themselves facing aggression from patients and their families, compromising the patient's quality of life and eroding healthcare professionals' confidence. Seeking solutions, caregivers turn often to specialists, doctors, psychologists, managers or team coaches, often doubting their own capabilities. This lack of confidence may stem from a knowledge gap, but more frequently it's a result of hesitance to rely on their practical experience, hindered by protocols, for example, or all kinds of working methods and instruments. I remember working with a nursing team that expressed the need to do team coaching just after the pandemic, despite all the hardships they faced. The goal of these sessions was to discover or rediscover their own rich and practical knowledge and strengthen their collaboration with managers, coaches, doctors, and family. The team described their work environment as "there's a lot of restlessness during the night," one team member shared, and they were referring to residents wandering around or falling out of bed. "If you want to work here, you have to be a multitasker," another team member emphasized. This team, always striving to do what is best for the residents, wanted to delve deeper into understanding the challenging behavior of certain residents with dementia. Sometimes their usual approaches did not yield the desired results. They expressed a strong desire to learn, improve, and held themselves to high standards. The constant juggling between being present for the residents and being mentally preoccupied with various other tasks hindered their focus on the residents, gradually overshadowing the significance of being fully present in the here and now. They recognized that the power of connection with the residents in the present moment was far more crucial, but numerous barriers stood in their way. During the team reflection sessions, I saw them about half a year or so, we worked on deepening their practical knowledge and personal experience with residents. To stimulate reflection, we emphasized asking each other different types of questions. However, the team struggled to pinpoint their exact focus. They found it challenging to allocate time and create tranquil space for reflection. They even asked if the sessions could be shorter. The sudden loss of one of the residents brought forth a sense of falling short among the team members. Just for a moment, they paused during one of the sessions when someone started talking about the loss and how she felt about it. However, as they swiftly shifted their attention to the arrival of a new resident in the next week, I felt sad, and I was thinking of rituals that often provide support during the grieving process. So I asked how they had bid farewell to the deceased resident. They had not had the time. Even the involved specialists, the doctor, the psychologist, the psychotherapist, and the social worker had not had the time. But they, including all the team members, felt uncomfortable and wondered about the lack of mourning. In response to our conversation, the team members and specialists collectively organized a gathering to share stories about this resident and allow time for proper closure. It was as if they had awakened. And this became a turning point in their learning journey. The team took charge, and in addition to allocating more time for the grieving process, gained a clearer understanding of their own and other challenges and a renewed energy to address them. And for me, it was an example of working what it merges and supports self-regulation and self-organization in a very natural way. Working with what emerges. Sometimes I have little plan working with a team. But, you know, I like to work with what emerges because I think that's a very basic thing we all can as Gestaltists. Work with what emerges and, you know, work in the here and now, use of self, avoiding the expert role, and creating conditions for dialogue, which is, of course, very important. And in this special case, it led to sharing just feelings of grief, which is, of course, very natural and and a need, sense of falling short. There was this first step in decision-making. So I'm not going to say, you have to decide for yourself. No, it just was there. It unfolds. And after that, they took charge. There was this ownership you were talking about. It was just there. And I did not do anything about it. It was just a very natural process because there was time just to connect with the needs they had. And when I say it's simple like that, but it's not. And that's the thing that puzzles me all the time, of course, when we're talking about this rigid, dominant structure of management development. So, just some aspects of my role. Always setting conditions for dialogue. Always working, reflecting on work-related issues, which is very important when you work in healthcare. And supporting those who are willing to take ownership, that's also one. You know, there are always people who are willing to take ownership, and you can work with them. Working as well in the boardroom and in the teams. I did not mention a case working with management team. I do work with them. And that is also, of course, important because it starts with leaders that wholeheartedly adopt these principles. But because there's so less attention for teams, I did not want to mention that too much. So I work as well in the boardroom and with the teams. Supporting teams to integrate thinking and doing, you know, because I had talked about the split. So, you know, taking the person as a whole, it's about the thinking and doing at the same time, also for the professionals. And encourage leaders to scrape pointless administration. You know, again, it's not hypothetical, but take action for it. Focusing on decision-making and standing firm as a Gestalt practitioner against excessive use of instrument methods and projects, because all the HR departments ask, what are you going to do precisely? And you have to be very detailed in that. Yesterday I saw something, you know, like the engine of change. We talk about the engine of change. I don't know. You know, the engine for me also refers to the mechanistic way of working, you know, Taylor. So I'm a bit confused when I talk about the engine, if you can imagine after my story. But I like Marianne Chidiak's. She says it's from a change agent to an awareness agent, and that's very much I like what I do, I think. And yesterday somebody said, awareness is not enough. I think that it is revolutionary in a lot of organizations to take time and to become aware. Use of self, of course, and perhaps this is the only instrument I have, and inviting others to use of self as well. But I feel sometimes like a drop in the ocean working on this. You can imagine, because the dominance of the traditional management is big, and also the rules and the protocols, whatever. So I sometimes feel very small. So I need to work in organizations like this. As a Gestalt practitioner, I need a lot of support, and luckily I have that. I have a supervision group for more than 10 years with Guus Klaren, and I see Ton sitting in the room, hi, to dive into, of course, my own questions. So support, supervision, if you want to work as a Gestalt practitioner, is key. 10 years ago, I was invited by my colleague Ian van Duinhoven to Intagio, which is, and some of you are here, Intagio, the International Organization of Gestalt in Organizations. And we come together once a year. There are online sessions. So, you know, to be able to talk about our experience working with organizations. If you want to have some information, some of them are here. And of course, the GPO. I did the GPO 3 years ago. I think the process of deepening more about my work in organizations and Gestalt. So that's important to have. And of course, to do some reading. If you want to have some reading, the first book is the book of buurtzorg. The way, so if you are interested in working with teams, the first is a very practical book. And the other two are Gestalt books. There are not many books written about Gestalt in organizations, but they're good, I think, and inspiring. I want to end with some challenges for our community. Looking at the time, huh? Right. I think that, I don't know, when I look at this community, there are a lot of people working individually with clients. What I see in the Netherlands, I see this transformation also in mentally care, that it's more about supporting the whole system and people in their community. And that is something I would like for us to be a challenge that we not only focus on working with individuals, but working with groups and teams and supporting communities and networks. And I think, we can articulate our voice more based on our values and the human values we stand for in the world of organization and theory and practice. And of course, support organizations that are aligned with the values of Gestalt. I'd made myself a decision, to only work with organizations that are aligned with the values I have and not anymore with others. Take a moment to reflect. Perhaps there's something you want to take with you of all of this. Something that resonates. And to end, I was thinking, we have this gift. I think it's a gift. Our vision, our values, and our precious practice. But somehow, sometimes it's not unfolding yet. And we can stand more for our beliefs. And it's already there. That's what I learned preparing my presentation for today. It's already there in our roots. And if I may say so, in this chaotic and years of crisis, it's good to be aware of your roots. So, thank you. And good luck. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgette. It works? Yes. Thank you, Georgette. It was very inspiring, and for me at least. And we have 10 minutes only. If you have any questions or comments to Georgette, there is a time for that.
Thanks. Hi there. Oh yeah, stand up. Okay, thanks. My name is Marcel. I actually live in the Netherlands. I'm not Dutch myself, but I have lived around for some time. I found it quite interesting that it seemed to me that values played a key role in your presentation and also in your work. And towards the beginning, you mentioned that you see one of the key roles of your work is for the values that you have outlined, specifically in relation to buurtzorg, but I guess also in general, that the values have to be adopted. And then towards the end, you mentioned that you work with organizations that already are more inclined towards these values. So what I would be curious about is, of course, I understand that you want to move away from, for instance, the financial sector, but how would you approach organizations where these values are not present? And of course, I'm asking you a question which you are not working with, but still I would be curious to hear if you have an answer to this.
Yes, I understand. Well, for me, it starts with the directors that adopt these principles, because when you look at traditional nursing homes, it's not that when you say, when I say I work only with organizations that adopt those principles, that all of those people working there adopt those principles. But it starts with working with directors that say, okay, I'm open to find out. And in basic, I adopt these principles. And that, for me, is a starting point.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. My name is Eduardo from Spain. First of all, I would like to thank you for bringing this subject. I think that it touches not only older people, but also us, because we also want to have a future that has a meaning, and the importance to eliminate as much as possible the profit or this hierarchy and the way how you proposed in Holland. So I really like it, and I would like that we were able to, I don't know, to have this information to incorporate to. We are moving things where I live in Barcelona, in Catalonia, but we need to be inspired and maybe exchange, or so I don't know what can be the...
Okay.
So the idea of coaches, the idea of reducing the hierarchy, I know from projects that usually they allocate 10% for the administration. Here it's 0.4, so it's just amazing that this structure which really fits the principles of Gestalt, so thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. And it's already adopted in 30 countries, huh? Buurtzorg. So it's not only in the Netherlands, already there.
Hello, my name is Joe, and I have worked a lot in hospitals. And one of my experiences with wonderful nurses is they don't know how to complete a cycle, and their empathy is so large that they take it home with them. So I'm wondering if you've had that experience. What was most effective for me was to teach them to complete a cycle.
Well, actually, Joe, when I think of the example that they just did not stand still with their own feelings, you know, about the mourning of the loss of the resident. They were thinking, oh, I'm falling short, I didn't do well, you know, all those things. So I recognize that much. And I think what I meant with what is revolutionary in organizations is to stand still and to pause and to share. So that's what I always try to do, support dialogue, creating conditions for dialogue. That's my main focus, actually. Yeah. Martin, you're so...
Running. Gracias. No sé si lo has dicho.
I don't know if you said that. I didn't hear you saying that. What sort of financial structure do they have in place in Buurtzorg?
Or can someone translate this?
We need a
on
translator.
hand?
Who can translate? Yeah.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. This is the interpreter. What sort of financial structure do they have in place in residences, in homes?
Structure of Buurtzorg.
I'm not sure all the details about that, but it's not, it's a, in Dutch we say a stichting. I'm not sure what the translation is. Sorry?
Foundation.
It's a foundation, yeah. Sorry? No stakeholder profits, or, yeah. But the details you have to find out. Yeah. But it's not a, yeah, it's not profit. No profit, no. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. And right now, Eduardo has some important information, especially for those